Parthiban Kanavu, English translation by Anand Kannan, narrated by Sujatha Anand. Book 2, Chapter 24, Marappan's Heartache. Why did Marappan follow Valliyan Ponnan that night? We need to go back to the events of the evening to answer that question. When Marappan left the emperor's court, he was disheartened. He did not expect his services to the empire to go so spectacularly fruitless. It had been 7 years since Parthiban died on the battlefield. He had expected to be rewarded with the throne of the Choya Empire just for abstaining from that battle. When the expectation did not materialize, he had not shown his disappointment or displeasure. His loyalty to the Pallava Empire was outwardly the same. Finally, he had also tipped Achyutavarman on Vikraman's conspiracy. His tip had been the reason the revolt was quelled. He had been convinced that his loyalty would be rewarded. All that he desired was a position of a vassal under the Pallava emperor. At the very least, he was hoping to be reinstated as a commander in the army. What really happened was that the emperor developed misgivings as to his loyalty. He, who was once the heir to the Choya throne, had been insulted in the presence of a lowly boatman and his wife. Upon this thought, he was vexed with his life. He was letting his horse take him places without conscious thought. The horse seems to sense its master's frame of mind and went slowly on its own way. It wandered around on the streets of Urayur and reached the banks of Kaveri. It walked east along the river. It was the 4th night of waxing moon. The moon appeared, and then the stars emerged all over the sky, resembling scattered diamonds. Marappan went a fair distance without sensing the beauty in all this. When he did become aware, he checked where he was and turned the horse around towards Urayur. As he entered the Urayur fort, he saw a group of people carrying torches and playing musical instruments. He also noticed that they were carrying the lion flag. He thought it might be the emperor and his family going to Sri Ranganatha temple, got off his horse and respectfully moved to the side of the street. When the group got closer, he did not see the emperor, but saw General Achyutavarman and an ascetic with shaved head. The ascetic was well built and had an aura about him. Marappan was struck by a thought. Could this be the impostor who acts as the Shaivite sage? Achyutavarman's sight fell on Marappan at that time. He beckoned him to come closer and pointed him to Sirathondar, the ascetic. Your Holiness, do you recognize him? He is Marappa Bhupati, the brother of King Parthiban. Oh, is he? I have seen him years ago, in Emperor Mahendra's time. I can't recognize him now. Achyutavarman said, He is the one who tipped us off on Vikraman's rebellion, but for whatever reason, he has not found favor with our emperor. Sirathondar gave Marappan another look, but moved on without further comment. After they left the spot, Marappan saw that a palanquin followed him, surrounded by royal maids. He guessed that it may be the princess and started moving away. To his surprise, the palanquin stopped. He heard a sweet voice calling, Bhupati. He saw the princess Kundavi and a devout-looking older woman were in the palanquin. He was pleasantly surprised that it was Kundavi who called him. He was also bashful. He wanted to look at Kundavi, but stood looking at the ground, feeling shy. Bhupati, my father was unduly stern with you today. Please don't let that upset you. I believe you. If you can help me find that Shaivite sage, I will be on your side, said Kundavi with a note of sympathy in her voice. Marappan was thrilled beyond words. He felt he went from the abyss straight to heaven. He looked up slightly and said, My lady, your wish is my command. I won't rest until I find that impostor. Very good. Let me know when you find him, said Kundavi, and ordered the carriers to resume their journey. Marappan stood stunned for a while after the party left. He had to think to confirm that he was not dreaming. He mounted the horse that walked up to him. He thought of the ascetic with the shaved head. He had heard of the General Paranjoti. He had heard that Paranjoti had been close to King Parthiban. Did that not give him the motive to assume the guise of the Shaivite sage and to cause trouble? He needed a way to verify that theory. The only way was to get back into the good books of Ponnan and Valli. Upon thinking, he realized that he had not met Ponnan or Valli in the long trip down the river bank and back. They must still be in Voriyur. Where would they stay in Voriyur? Could they be at Valli's grandfather's house? This thought gave him fresh energy. He hurried back to his residence. He handed the horse to the servants and set off on foot. He did not think of food or drink. He was keen to meet Valli and Ponnan that night. He walked towards the metalworkers' street. It was about 3 hours after sunset. The pedestrian traffic had thinned down. There were a few people on the street, including those who were returning from the temple, people who were going to see folk plays, and a few beggars. The dialogue from a folk play of the sage Vishwamitra summoning King Harishchandra was heard at a distance. Marappan was walking in a way that he hoped would not attract attention to him. As he neared the metalworkers' street, he saw a sight in the dim light that stopped him dead. It was the figure that was etched in his mind, the Shaivite sage. Just as he recognized the sage, the street lantern went out. Marappan was eager to catch the impostor and present him to the princess. Marappan ran towards the spot. It was a 4-way intersection. When he got to the spot, he could see no sign of the sage in any direction. A theory formed in his mind. If it was indeed the sage, he must have been on his way to meet Ponnan and Valli. He must have gone to Veerabhadrachari's house. Who knows what devious plans they are cooking up? It was indeed fortunate that the emperor was visiting at the time of the conspiracy. How would it be if he can catch them at the act? Would that not correct the impression the emperor had of him? Marappan was thinking along these lines and approached Veerabhadrachari's house. Ponnan and Valli were coming out of the house. Valli was hiding a lamp with her sari. They took a narrow lane that went northwards. Marappan concluded that they were following the sage to a destination which would be the rendezvous for the conspiracy. All this excitement had transformed Marappan into a new man. He followed them at a safe distance without making a noise. Ponnan and Valli reached the banks of Kaveri. Valli boarded the boat, placed the basket on the boat, and covered it with her sari. As we already saw, Ponnan had dragged the boat, reached the outer wall of the palace garden, tied the boat, and entered the garden with Valli. Marappan knew that it used to be the royal garden in Parthiban's days, and it had been unoccupied since then. He also knew that it had been locked at the emperor's orders. All this made Marappan conclude that Ponnan and Valli could be up to no good entering the garden at this time. He guessed that the sage was already in the garden. He was struck by a more ominous thought. Is it possible that Parthiban did not actually die in the battlefield? Could he have escaped from the battlefield, assumed the guise of the sage, and be masterminding this conspiracy? In any case, he was going to solve the mystery that night. He latched the garden door from outside and went to get a few men to help him. End of chapter 24.